this computer because I don't trust the cloud. Hopefully it gets my audio. All right, I'm going to start recording in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everyone, to our first series, episode number 5, as we move to the 2011 CrossFit Games. I'm Chase Ingram.
I'm Captain America.
Along with Bill Grundler.
Wolverine.
And we just want to start things off by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. We reached 5,000 unique downloads for our podcast. I didn't think we were going to get 5. I mean, Bill, we just started this because we love to do this. We love to talk about this. This is just a passion of ours. And the fact that people actually want to listen to us blab about this stuff and nerd out along with us, I think it's awesome. So I'm super pumped, super thankful.
Dude, I think it's amazing for sure. But the craziest thing is, I mean, yeah, cool, let's do a podcast. But dude, let's get serious, man. We just want to hang out. Yeah. Nerd out on program stuff because that's what we do anyway. And then people want to hang out with us and do that. So that's kind of cool. I'm stoked. Welcome everybody. And I'm glad you guys are coming along with us. Why not, man?
Hey, we're going to do this anyways, whether you guys listen or not.
That's right. God dang it.
We started this as, me and Bill have been broadcasting together since 2012. And it used to be the only time we got to hang out was during the times. And then as things progressed, media teams disbanded and is like, hey, I'll see you, in Dubai instead of California or Texas. So this is kind of our opportunity to just get together more. And now we get to, we're just going to keep on trucking. So thank you guys for joining along with us. And we've done 4 episodes so far in this series, analyzing the CrossFit Games. 2010 was kind of that huge stepping point from Aromas, California, to Carson, California. And along with that, it opens up more to the programming side. But this year, the 2011 CrossFit Games, we thought changing locations was a massive jump in terms of legitimizing the sport. 2011 brought Reebok, title sponsor. Yeah. What was it? $250,000 to the winner on the men's and women's side. ESPN is now taking control of the CrossFit Games. And so the level at which this jumped is, we won't see anything like this again in terms of, from one year to the next in terms of the spectacle.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is kind of look at is, did the programming come along with it?
Well, and I think, what we've found is, even though there have been these jumps into spectacle, there's been a lot of testing to make sure that every addition did add to that. We saw sometimes it did work. We saw sometimes that it didn't necessarily work. But it was, it was all trying to fit within that realm of the definition of what is fitness. Because, I mean, again, our sport is different. It isn't just who's the fastest or who can lift the most or who puts the ball into the hoop more times than someone else. It's all of that stuff. And the goal that we have is fitness. Mm-hmm. We have our definition. So we need to know if the race or the test or the competition, applies to that. And it's interesting. And this year is really interesting because of the additions that are made to the program. And I think it opens up for a lot of interesting discussion when you think about what the pieces are going to be.
I don't know if you can hear the lawnmowers outside. Yes, but if you guys pick up a little ambient noise, that's what's going on. But Bill, exactly to your point, is that the sport of CrossFit isn't like any other sport in the world. One of the challenges is that it's always different, right? The programming is never the same. It's not like a basketball game where it's, 4 quarters, halves, 3 points, 2 points, free throws, football field set, plays. And there's so much structure in other sports that it's kind of like, hey, we're just going to play this game and see who wins. The big challenge here is that, you move locations. The programming needs to fit the location that you're in. And it might be limited by the location that you're in, which is kind of what we saw in Aromas. And then Carson just totally expanded what they could do. But the challenge on the programming side too is that since it's always changing and always evolving, trying to test the fittest and find the fittest, that aspect of the programming is a huge undertaking.
Yeah, and it's a weird variable, because if you boil down, Coach Glassman's What is Fitness, that paper that he wrote, you look at all the different models that he has in there. You said the three, sort of the four, but the three basic models that we're looking at, you boil it all down to, you should be good at anything. So when that's your test, like all of a sudden it gets very vague about like, okay, well then what's a good test then? Mm-hmm. And I think that this year especially added some elements that by that definition it fits, mm-hmm. but was it really appropriate? Like, did it really, did it work to find the fittest, or did it work to find the most athletic, or did it work to find, someone that just is more skill oriented more than someone else, or are they just a workhorse? I mean, that's what really is, I think, interesting about this year, the 2011 games.
And I think that's going to be the fun thing as we get into it, is that just because those skills are in there to maybe test athleticism and skill, we're going to give our opinion in the terms of if those were appropriate additions to the overall test. So, yeah. Hey, let's get right into it. Let's do it. What's hard for me is that I missed the CrossFit Games this year after making it in 2010, and I was super close at regionals in 2011. But this year is the year that they had regionals for the first time in 2010, but then they had, in those times, every region could program their own thing.
Right.
We weren't getting the same tested athletes together at the games. This year, all the regionals had the same exact events to qualify this group, and I believe it was 49 men and 47 women, from all over the world to come to the CrossFit Games this year. And not only was I bitter about not making it, the first event for the first time ever at the CrossFit Games involved a swim. And the event was called The Beach, and it was a lot like Murph.
Totally.
And so, we see Murph later down the road, but, some people might not realize that there was a Murph-ish event before they ever did it. I believe it was 2015.
Yeah.
This year that they had it. So it was now distances, who knows?
Ish.
What was
just add the ish and you're fine. Ish, and then you're fine.
210-meter ocean swim, 1,500-meter run, 50 chest bar pull-ups, 100 hand release push-ups, 200 air squats, and then a 1,500-meter run. Yet the runs were very, again, another unique twist or challenge that they've put out there of where they forced them to run.
Yeah, it was in the deep sand. So we're down at the Santa Monica Pier, and that sand down there it's thick, fairly fine. So it's hard to get a good footing, and when you run in it, I mean, the only thing that's really comparable to that are like when the men and women that were running in Dubai, where it was a lot of sand and a lot of the athletes. Like, I was lucky enough. I was a swimmer as well, not a collegiate swimmer, but I swam, and so I got to test the swimming and the run. I got to test this event for Dave, and the swim.
This event for Dave?
Yeah.
Cool.
So the swim, he shortened up the swim because he knew what the athletes would or would not be able to do. So, as far as the swim being added, yes, it was added, but it really wasn't. If you're a swimmer, it wasn't really added at all. It was more like, let's just get wet before you do the rest of the event. For other people, it was a definite addition, but the sand was hard. And so a lot of people were coming to me to ask, hey, what should I wear on my feet? Should I wear shoes? Should I not wear shoes? If you watch the videos, you go back and watch the videos, you see Chris Spieler, he pulled out the Vibram 5 fingers and he's running in the 5 fingers, My personal choice I come from a lifeguard background, so I said, don't wear anything. But there were athletes that did wear shoes, and they got a whole, it's like weighted ankle weights with all that sand in their shoes and stuff. So,
and to your point is that at the time, right, we need to always kind of look at these games and events at the time at which they were programmed, so 2011 kind of eyeballs on this event, at the time, an ocean swim, no matter the distance, was, for a lot of people, terrifying.
Oh, 100%.
They have no experience in the water, right? It's not like a pool swim. It's not like a lake swim. Because when you add the surf and also the sight, like different than a pool or a lake, depending on the lake, you still get to see some distance underwater.
Yeah.
So there's some semblance of comfortability being able to see. But when you do an ocean swim in the morning, your line of sight, I mean, is what, 2-3 feet at best?
Yeah, if that.
Thrashing around and punching you. And, you know, what was tough about that one is that knocked out 2 major players on the men's side right off the bat. One quit.
Yeah.
Right? Rob Orlando.
Well, and you know what? I talked to Rob about that, and Rob's not a swimmer guy. He's a strong man. That's what he does. Yeah, beastly strong. And I was talking to him afterwards, and he's like, I was going underwater, and honestly, I saw my kids, and I'm thinking, this is just not worth it.
Wow.
So I mean, he, hand went up, lifeguards came and got him.
That's a real.
Yeah. And that's the difference. That's one of the elements. So there was a lot of discussion about that, and I don't know if you want to go to the discussion pieces at the end. If you want to run through okay, we'll come back because I think that it's a really important part of whether it was a viable piece or not. And it'll lead to a lot of discussion. So we'll save that to the end. But I think the addition of having it was cool, and the way that they set this up, a nice, and this kind of set the stage for a lot of the CrossFit Games, is you throw that endurance piece on the very first day and kind of get it out of the way. And
unique element.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Unique elements, because swim, soft sand run, 50 chest to bar pull-ups, 100 hand release push-ups was now we saw that in the open leading.
Well, we also saw that at the games the year before that, when they did the final event where they had to do the 30 hand release push-ups and then go up over the wall. So the hand release push-ups have been there. Honestly, what I thought was most interesting out of that for myself was the squats, because the only standard was hip crease below the knee, open up at the top. However, if you watch, and this is what a CrossFit athlete's always going to do. And Annie was the one who kind of got, I don't like to say she got nailed on this, but I mean, she was the one that was seen doing it, but she wasn't the only one. Jason Kalipa did this as well, putting your hands on your legs and using your hands to help push up, which that wasn't allowed. So hell yeah, I would do that too. And I'm surprised that there weren't more athletes that did do that.
So with that event, started things off in the morning. We have two monostructurals, so run and a swim, 3 gymnastics, long, 30 minutes, high volume. Just another one of those, they tend to do that early on, is like that first event was like a really long aerobic endeavor. Now this time throwing in the gymnastics, your winners on the men's side for the very first time, Josh Bridges.
Yeah.
One of his many event wins over the years. So his name comes into the limelight for the very first time. And on the women's side, Julie Fouché. Yeah. So she wins. She beat Sam Briggs. Now we have Briggs, now we're starting to see
the names.
These names really start to trickle in. She only beat Sam by 10 seconds.
Yep.
And those aren't really events that Sam loses. I think that might have been more a product of the swim than anything.
Right.
So that was event 1. And so Josh Bridges gets his first event win at the CrossFit Games. Julie Fouché gets her first win at the CrossFit Games. And as we move from the ocean swim, our first real off-site thing from California, we go to event number 2, which now we start getting into what is in 2011 skills testing.
Right.
Now what these did is they had 3 different skills, and they actually had 2 different skilled events. And how they scored it is you got a finishing place score. So if you got 4th, you got 4 points. If you got 40th, you got 40 points for every individual skill. Then they cumulatively added those together and then scored you.
So yeah, so it was like a competition within a competition, a little mini competition within a competition.
You could have a bad skill of the 3 and still win the event overall if you had 2 really good ones. Now, one thing to add on to this is that, we have cuts again this year. The first cut is coming after event number 5. The scoring system has changed for the 3rd time in 5 years.
Yeah. Testing it out, man.
The 100-point sliding scale. However, this year, it's a 5-point drop from 1st to 6th.
Yeah.
In 2007 and now 2007, it was to 3rd, and then 1 point below.
Yep.
Here, it's 5 points down to 6. So if you get 1st, you get 100. If you get 6th, you get 75. Which is a crazy drop from 1st to 6th. 3-point drops from there down to 30th. Or is it 2-point drops?
They are 2-point drops, yeah.
2-point drops down to 30th, and then 1-point drop down to the end of the line. So that does come into play. It's a new system. It's a new scoring. We have cuts looming. So here are your 3 skills. You have 1 attempt at a max L-sit. Which when it was programmed, I was like, oh, what? The second skill was probably the most infamous event of that games.
I would say.
It's talked about now.
Yeah.
Was a max distance softball throw, which we'll come back to. And then a max distance handstand walk. You got 1 attempt on the L-sit. You got 1 attempt on the walk. And then you got 2 attempts on the softball throw. So let's go to the L-sit. This is a test of core strength, stability.
Gymnastics. I'd say gymnastics.
Yes, a massive. I mean, it's a test. Like if you guys have ever done a legit L-sit. However, there's a lot of. I believe there's a big flexibility component in here too, in terms of making it easier the more flexible you are.
Well, just think about like if you don't have hamstring flexibility, you're gonna have a really difficult time holding your legs straight out in that L position. And the way that they did it was they had them on parallettes, and they had the bumper plates underneath their heels. So that's how they determined whether or not the L-sit was done, because their feet couldn't touch those plates. So, for a lot of us, if we do L-sits in the gym, or we do L-sits in a workout station or something like that, you'll notice that your L starts to hang a little bit. So I'm in an L, but my feet are almost straight down, so, I mean, you'll see that happens. And this really, I thought that the way that they set it up was pretty interesting. It really allowed for, to really push the athletes. And what's crazy is, like, think about it. Like if you were to say, Chase, like right now, like how long could you hold an L-sit? I would say for myself, even when I was like way more competitive and training harder, I'd be like, I don't know, 40 seconds maybe. Like on a good day, maybe. Like, and that's really what everyone saw. What's crazy is that this is one of those things that Coach Glassman talks about all the time. He feels that a true athlete, someone that is truly fit and is using this in their has their skill with this, they should be able to hold it for 3 minutes. And that to me doesn't make any sense.
A professional Olympic gymnast.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
That's kind of one of those sliding scale things, and we've touched on this before in terms of being a specialist.
Yeah.
If you come to me and tell me you have a 3-minute L-sit, then I want to know what you suck at the most.
Yeah.
How many things you have sacrificed to get there, because there's a major sacrifice to be that good at it. Now, 3 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. And let's move on.
All right. So there's the L-sit. A good test. I like the skill, because I think some of these skills they're trying to dip into the 10 general physical skills category in terms of the tests of fitness that they have in that What is Fitness lecture. So you're looking at, strength, stamina, flexibility is a huge component of that tested skill. Now let's move into skill number 2, where I guess the idea was to test athleticism, which we found out that at the time, CrossFitters aren't that athletic.
What's interesting was back in those days, you had athletes that were either really good at some things and really not good at other things. I mean, we saw it in the swim, same exact thing. The ones that could swim crushed, the ones that could not swim drowned. The ones that can throw weights around can throw weights around. And if they were an athlete, i.e. Jason Khalipa, and had never really thrown a ball before, or that wasn't really their thing, then this really came out, and you saw some of the funniest throws. I mean, I know that Jason gets a lot of crap about this one because it was just the funniest thing, because here's this beast of a guy, beast of a man.
Oh, man.
And then he picks up the ball and we're like, okay, he's going to throw this thing out the, wow. All of a sudden it looked like the left-handed, not very athletic throw. It was so bad. Everyone thought it was a joke. Everyone legitimately thought it was a joke. And I remember when he threw the ball, we were all sitting there on the field like, what? No, there's no way that was real. That had to have been like he's trying to just play to the crowd or something right now. But that was what it was. I mean, the ones that could throw, like the Spencer Hindles and those guys, man, they launched it.
You know, baseball background, Rich.
Totally. Those that had it, for sure.
Yeah, everyone gives Jason a lot of crap. But Chris Wheeler was worse than he was.
I know. I know.
Wheeler threw it 70. How far is that? I was like, all right, put yourself on a football field. And you basically asked him to throw it 20 yards. And he couldn't do it.
Well, maybe he has small hands. He couldn't grab the ball or something.
Anyway, so you know, it's fun to talk about. We joke about it a lot. I want to preface like that's when the quote term girl throw now gets thrown out of the window, because the women's side, they were way better than the men's side in the side throw. Okay, so they claim that as a kind of a test of accuracy, as maybe one of those 10 general physical skills, because what they had to do is it wasn't just throw it as far as you can. You had to keep it within like a 10-yard width.
Yeah.
Lane.
Yeah, they had a long or a wide, a long, narrow field that they were supposed to throw in, so it couldn't go outside of that. Yeah.
Soccer field, they had, you had 100 plus yards to that's 300 feet. But they only got 2 attempts, right? And again, it had to stay within that lane. The last one was a max distance handstand walk, which, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first time.
That was the first time.
Handstand walks.
Yeah.
When they announced that, I go, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was, and that was exactly how the athletes were on that. Again, like that's what's so interesting about the skills piece, is you had people that if they were good at it, they smashed it. And this is one of the things that, like when Rich came out, all of a sudden he's on his hands and he's walking and walking and walking and walking. You're like, oh my gosh. But what's even crazier than that, if you watch some of the other athletes like Annie Thor's daughter, Elizabeth Akinwale, like those guys, the CLB, Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet. I mean, those guys on their hands walking for days and days and days and days. And we're like, oh.
On grass.
Okay. Yeah. On the grass, I mean, they have a really good feel, but it's still an uneven surface. You do that now, everyone's so used to walking, on this nice flat surface in the gym, and walking on the ground's different, man. These guys crushed it.
So your overall winners for skills tests. So this is event number 2, Rich Froning. He gets 11th in the hold, 40 seconds, 4th in the throw, 1st in the handstand walk, walks nearly 150 feet. It's about 50 yards. With Lindsay Smith win. Yeah. That's a throwback.
Totally.
The old CrossFit Central crew. So Lindsay Smith, she gets 8th, 4th, and 17th. So again, they total your total finishing places and then give you a score based off that. So that was our first skills test. And again, this is all on a Friday. This is a 3-day event, again, like they had in 2010. And then we move into the rope clean event. We go into the tennis stadium for the first time for the games.
Yep.
Friday night, you have this scaffolding set up and all these ropes down. And what the event was is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. of rope climbs at 15 feet, and then ascending weighted clean and jerks. And we're just going to say power clean and jerks because that's what everybody did.
Right.
On the men's side, it was 145 to 225, adding 20 pounds. On the women's side, it was 115 to 155. This was kind of the whole buzz going in was, did he
climb a rope?
Rope climbs.
Right.
Because rope climbs was his undoing in 2010. It's why he lost the games. However, it was the things leading up to the rope climbs. He could do it. He had blown up. And so when Rich took the floor, it like the electricity in the tennis stadium, like I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now. Literally, because I was in the front row. I've been sitting in the tennis stadium for 3 hours just trying to get a front row seat to that. And he came out, and what's funny is that if you go back and watch, they have all the CrossFit Games videos.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, and this is no disrespect to my past colleagues. Don't watch the ESPN videos. Watch the vault videos. You can Google 2011 CrossFit Games. The vault videos have no commentary, but you hear the crowd, which to me sounds way better than the commentary that they put on ESPN.
Hey, thanks, jerk.
We didn't know what not the live commentary, the post-production.
Yeah, I know. Well, we were new, man. We were new at that. We were new back then.
They have a lot of the live commentary from 2011.
Yeah.
The post-production shows.
Yeah.
Which they retreaded the calls so it doesn't sound as authentic. And we didn't know what we were doing. And I say we, I'm not going to, but.
That's all. It was all of us. All of us.
It was really cool to watch. Now, I will say this is I think this is actually one of the easiest CrossFit Games events ever programmed.
That was exactly what I wrote down. I like what it is. I like the way it's put together. Yeah. But you have to think about, okay, when this was designed, what was the intent? Because if I look at those weights right now, I'm a almost 51-year-old guy, and I'd be like, wow, that's so light.
You're like touch and go.
Like, what the heck is that? So if it was me, I would say you either need to double the number of reps for the cleans, or you need to up the weight of those cleans quite a bit.
Now that's now. Let's look at it from the
100%. But I'm even talking even then. Like I just, if I was to look at that, 220
for those
225 for one, 225 for one.
Go back and watch the video.
Oh no, I know exactly what Rich was doing. Like when Rich cleaned the 225, it was that dude is so strong, and it looked like me trying to clean, like 275. Yeah. That's what I mean. But still, like it just seems like it was a light. And these guys, they're flying through it. They did it Rich did it sub 5, super fast. Now, what's interesting if you go back and watch that, Rich goes from not having a rope climb to he is the best rope climber on the floor. He did in that 1 year's time what everyone does on rope climbs now, which is he jumps up and he pulls his feet up way higher than everyone else. He's almost upside down as he goes into his pull. And if you watch the other athletes, this is a 15-foot rope climb. These guys are taking 3 pulls to get up to the top. Rich is doing it in like 1, sometimes 2. Or, he's 1 big one and then reaching up to the top, whatever. But I as far as what the event is, I think it's really cool. But you're right. I think that it's I
love it because I'm actually good at it. So
it's easy.
Why I think that. If I'm good at a CrossFit Games event, it's too easy.
It's obviously the best event ever.
But yes, that was kind of Rich's, this isn't a problem. And like you said, is he revolutionized how to be good at a rope climb. And I think that is a testament of an athlete's greatness. And we'll see that progress over the next 4-year span of Rich's dominance over the CrossFit Games. Is that you see that with any athlete, right? Is that there's always seems to be a stumbling point, a massive failure. And they're either going to go one direction or the other. And what the greats do is like, okay, I got better at it. I don't suck at that. Or I quit instead.
Right.
What the greats do is like, this will never be a problem again, ever. And they go to another level. And we saw that from Rich. And I feel like that was his moment of kind of really, we're like, okay, things have changed in the last 360
Yeah.
days. So on that event, Rich Froning wins at, like you said, a time of 4:57, so sub 5. Annie Thorstadter wins on the women's side. Now, when we look at it again, we need to look at it kind of through the eyes of 2011. You got another gymnastics. We've hit a lot of gymnastics in the last 3 events.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the weight got heavy, right? It didn't start heavy, but I mean, you saw guys failing and women failing the last bar too.
Yeah.
That isn't a sign of that it's light. It's light now, but back then it was heavy enough. Sub 5 is the fastest we've seen. Low reps. Couplet, another task priority. It was kind of our first weighted event.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've done 3 events and we finally got our first heavy, I would say, weightlifting style event. And so that was really cool. It was a Friday night event that closes out the first day. And we wake up the next morning to another, these events were so fun to watch. So here's the cool thing is like, once we get through this series, we've said this before, is that, we're going to kind of collect our top 20 favorite CrossFit events of all time and then do a fun little, totally biased and subjective favorite CrossFit event elimination bracket.
Yeah.
And as I see some of these, it's like, I'm starting to write them down because this Saturday morning event, the track or the triplet sprint, so cool. I almost forgot about this. And so what it is, it's 4 rounds, 5 muscle ups, 10 deadlifts at 245 and 165, 15 GHD sit-ups, and then a shuttle run where the distances increased every round. So it's 50 meters, 100, 150, 200. And what that was is an out and back. So really it was like 25, 50, 75, and 100 meters. Yet again, we have another unique wrinkle in this event on the deadlift side.
Yeah, I just, it's not that it,
plates.
What's that?
They use those tiny little plates.
Yeah, so it's almost like doing like a deficit because you got to reach down for them a little bit lower. This is classic of what Dave does for the games programming is he takes what you are normally used to doing and there's a fine tweak on it. And it's weird because it doesn't seem like it would be that much, but just like we saw all the way back in the 2008 games where we did the chest to bar Fran, no one had done, or that really wasn't a thing, a chest to bar Fran, but that extra 3 inches made a big difference. It makes a difference here, especially if, think about it, deficit deadlifts suck anyway. And the weight wasn't extremely heavy. And everyone looked at 245. I'm like, okay, 245. Okay, I could do that.
Bill, not everyone. Okay.
The 99% of the people are looking at that saying it's okay. Unless you're one of those guys that have been like an Austin Malleolo who's got like the mega long arms. Doesn't really matter if it was a deficit or not. But I loved how it was set up. And again, because it doesn't allow the athletes to fall into a routine, they have to actually think about it as they go to the deadlifts. Like they're not just going to grab and go like if it was Diane or something like that. They're going to have to get to it and have to think. They're bent down lower. They're having to use their hamstrings more. They're not in the normal position where they can just grip it and rip it off the ground. And then I think a lot of people, now they look at the muscle ups and think like 5. That's really not that much, but we're looking at 20 overall. I love the way it's mixed up though. You kind of have things that are all over the board. You got your gymnastics, you got your lifting, you got your skill piece with the GHD, you got your sprinting piece. So like it's kind of all over and shoved together. It's an interesting little event for sure.
It touches all the bases, right? In terms of gymnastics, monostructural, but it doesn't do it in the classic sense. Like I said before, like a Helen, right? Helen,
right?
Kettlebell swings and pull-ups, easy. Now, 5 muscle-ups, as you said, is not a lot to look at now, but at the time, it was the most muscle-ups ever programmed at the CrossFit Games in total for 20 reps.
Right.
So,
and you got to remember that even with the GHD, that's the first time we've had the GHD in there, and I'd say the second time because we did it in the at Aromas. That's right. But realizing how much that takes out of your hips for those muscle ups is a big deal. And so I think that was that is a deadly little mix when you look at what the midline has to deal with in between the deadlifts and then the GHD.
Very deceptive event, and you saw that when you go back and watch the video.
Yeah,
came out of the gates flying like 5, 10, 15, no problem. Little sprint back to the rings, and what they didn't notice is that you got the ring muscle ups as a unique gymnastic skill and test.
Right.
You have we would call deficit deadlifts, but the small plated deadlifts where they have to bend over more. Not getting used to what that stimulus is like for these athletes. And 205 at the time for 40 reps, that was a good amount of weight for the amount of reps that they were doing. So you got that posterior, I would say, core strength taxing movement.
Oh, no, it's being used.
Or do a GHD sit-up, and you got the anterior or the front side, and then you throw out a run just to get them gassed. Right?
Totally. So now they're doing it all breathing hard.
And when you think about those movements, like there's really no movement in there where there's a reprieve for the lungs, except maybe the sprint. Because like muscle ups, that's a kind of a grunt movement, right? Deadlifts hunched over even more, a squeezing of the core, not being able to breathe, and the GHD. So I think what people didn't really see happening was their, cardio respiratory got so taxed on the first 3 movements that their so-called sprint rest, they're like, this doesn't feel right.
Right. I know. And what's crazy was that if you look at the times, and then again, like this is where you have the disparity on a lot of the athletes. We didn't have as many completely well-rounded CrossFit athletes coming out here, because you have athletes, Michelle Kinney, she won for the women's side 8:14. She had a 30-second lead over the second place. Wow. But like the distance between that on the athletes was somewhere between like 8 minutes and 20 minutes on the women's. Like that's a gigantic difference. So you're looking at average like 11:30 somewhere in there.
And a lot of
same thing for the guys
too. On
what's that?
The muscle ups.
No, 100%. But 100%. But even that's what I'm talking about. Like you see the athletes, if there is a hole in an event like this, it's showing who has a hole, and it could be in the pulling, it could be in the sprinting, it could be in the muscle ups, whichever. But there is a vast difference between those athletes, even on the guys' side. 7:14 to around 12-ish minutes. Like that's a big spread for what this event should be. So it's interesting.
And to me, that's a sign of a good test. Right?
Yeah,
testing these athletes in a way that they're not used to, and when you see that spread, that just shows these athletes is like, you have way more holes in your game than you thought you did.
Oh, 100%.
This game. So
100%.
When we look at it, classic CrossFit event to me, you're touching all the bases: weightlifting, gymnastics, monostructural. Like I said, it's at 5 to 10 minute range. Josh Bridges wins on the men's side. He gets his second event win. You just said Michelle Kinney on the women. I would say a moderate weight for the deadlift and the volume at which they were doing. And so that's event 4. Now we move into event 5. And the important thing here is that after event 5, we're going to make our first cut. So after event 5, they're going to cut from a field of almost 50 on both sides to 35. And so what we want to make sure is that we do when we get through event 5 is how's the test been up to this point, and is an appropriate time to cut the field down. So event 5 is skills test number 2. The first skill was a 1 rep max chest to bar pull-up. So they had belts and you could add weights as needed. They had 2 minutes to do this. Now, then they'll move into a 1 rep max snatch.
Yeah.
The crazy part is they only had 2 minutes to find it.
2 minutes. Yeah.
And then they go right into a max distance jug carry in 60 seconds. And these are like these military grade water canisters that the weights were, they were like halfway filled. So it wasn't like a dumbbell. We'll get to it, but
yeah.
in between, I wasn't sure. Was it 2 minutes right into it, or was there a minute break in between?
It was right into it. So you had your 2 minutes, and then, so we had 2 minutes, 2 minutes, go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we look at the 1 rep max pull up. I think a unique test of strength coupled with, I would say, gymnastics. It's like, that pulling to the bar of a weighted pull-up. I thought it was cool, different.
What I liked about it is that was a harkening back to the older days of like weightlifting. I mean, like the guys like me who used to do back and bis and chest and tris and all that kind of stuff, we did weighted pull-ups. Mm-hmm. Maybe not chest to bar weighted pull-ups. I think that was the little tweak. That was the twist in there for sure. But getting up on a pull-up bar with a belt and having some weight, I think that was cool. And you could tell that was a difference because we were getting so used to, okay, I need to see how many pull-ups I can do and be able to do them under fatigue. And it was different. It was, but I think also back then, like how many times have you done weighted pull-ups in your training, like recently? I think that people have taken it out mostly. So this was old school. This was an old school like throwback.
That was another hard thing to watch is like weighted pull-ups. Is like, that's my thing. I can do that. I'm sitting here watching because I sucked at regionals. So what I look at this as 3 different tests of strength.
Yeah.
You have that, I would say a vertical pull down with the weighted pull-up.
Yep.
And then you move to the snatch, which would be from the ground, caught in a full squat. From that pull from the floor, speed through the middle, strength in the receiving position. 2 minutes is not a lot of time. The numbers that some of these guys put up in a matter of 2 minutes. I mean, it takes some people 2 minutes to load the darn bar. To get into that. So you might have 2, maybe 3 attempts.
Yeah, you have to know exactly what weight you're going to do. And remember, think about it now. Whenever almost every fitness, CrossFit event, whatever, whether it's a sectional or a regional or a competitive, even a local throwdown, they will always have a weightlifting component like this. And it always ends up being this, where you do all your warm-up back in the warm-up area. And then you have anywhere from like 10 to 15 to 20 minutes before you actually hit the floor and have to lift. Mm-hmm. So these guys did that. They were back in the warm-up area having to do their warm-up, figuring out what numbers they wanted to hit. Then they had to come out and do their 2 minutes of pull-ups, having an idea there, and then go right into the snatch. And you didn't really have time to warm up to the weight you wanted. You had to know, and it's the classic thing, get one you can hit and then try to go after that. But what I thought was most impressive was, again, this is that exponential growth of the CrossFit athlete. We did a 1 rep max snatch at the CrossFit Games, and the numbers that were there compared to the number, what was that? 2 years? 2 years.
Yeah.
1, 2. Yeah. Yep. Like the jump was out of. It was insane. It was absolutely out of this world. And I'm talking on the women's and the men's side. I mean, Lindsay Valenzuela, she hit like 165 pounds. Spencer Hendel hits a 265.
That's insane.
That's insane, man. 2 minutes.
11 in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, now so that was the snatch event or test, I should say. The jug carry, I think this was one of those visual spectacles.
Yeah.
It was cool to see because, they had 60 seconds. They could put it down anytime they wanted, and they just had to walk as far as they could.
Yeah.
Now these jugs are filled with water, which added the handles were thicker than what you say, like maybe a dumbbell.
Yeah. Think of it like one of like a metal gas can. Think of it, they're big like that. They had shot and water, and so it was a mixture between the two so that they can get a heavy weight. And I don't remember what the weight was. It was
heavy though.
I mean, they were heavy. I mean, this wasn't a light work, but what I liked about it was it does play into the let's give you a real world scenario work element to test. I mean, we lift barbells, we do all that kind of stuff, but this is, you think about a classic worker, like a blue collar worker, the construction worker, whatever, that's got these these vice grip hands, and the athletes that have some skill in that, and have done that in their life at some point or use that in their regular world, they're the ones that did really, really well on that. And it was fun to watch. It was really interesting to see how they would move and how they would decide to do that. And again, like, it was, you could put it down whenever you want. So you could break it up, you could move forward, you could hook grip it, you could do whatever the heck you wanted. It was just about getting work done. And I really like when it does give you that element of like, okay, just here's the test, ready, go. And then make something happen.
All right, so that's your second test on the skill side. And after this is when they make their first cut. So I look at all these tests as we just said, as unique tests of strength. And then after 5 events, we cut to 35. What I've seen so far is that we have a much more gymnastic heavy first 5 events. We have tested a moderately heavy deadlift, a moderately heavy clean and jerk within a workout. We just tested a 1-rep max snatch in a 2-minute time frame. Yet, if you are proficient and you're strong, you will display that. And we saw a lot of athletes do that.
Right.
I've seen a lot of grippy pulling on the gymnastics side. Right?
Tons. Chest
to bar pull-ups, rope climbs, weighted chest to bar pull-up. We have a
well, you got all the skills. The whole skill setup was all grip,
pull, and then the grip on the F.
Oh yeah,
it's been super grippy.
Yeah,
first 5 events. In terms of cutting down from to 35, I think we've tested enough things, because the skills test has had 3 tests within those. So it's not just 5 events that we've tested; it's been 5 events that we've scored. But we've tested 9.
Yeah,
technically.
Yeah.
So we cut down to that. And now when I say grip, we move to one of my favorite events in terms of the visual spectacle, the Killer Kage.
I just like the title.
Again, so this is one of those where I ran to the tennis stadium. I got in the very front seat, because at the time that you didn't have tickets. Like
right.
you paid for a ticket to come to the games, but you could sit wherever you wanted.
Yeah.
There was also room to do it.
So, I was just going to say that.
In there, I'm in the front row, and you see this massive caged rig that stretches 100 or 50 feet across the tennis stadium floor. And then you see these bikes out there that you've never seen, and then barbells. Like, what is this event going to be? And it's called Killer Kage, and it was 3 rounds. 7 front squats at 225 and 155, a 700-meter bike on the Watt bike, which probably very few remember that. Go back to the video and watch the vaulted version, because it is way more fun to watch, because you
totally.
Hear the crowd. It ends up being one of the best finishes you'll see. I'd say top 5 event finishes at the CrossFit Games for me. And then a 100-foot monkey bar traverse. And that's what the cage was for. We're like, what are they going to do? And so it was basically 25 pull-up bars down and back. And, another unique test, we see heavy front squats. Like, I remember seeing that at the time. I was like, people can do this?
See, okay, and that right there was the weight on that was exactly when we talked about the rope clean event. Mm-hmm. Why the hell are people like coming close to failing on that when you have to do 21 heavy ass front squats at 225 and 155? And that's what I mean. Like, that's where I think that there was a little bit of disparity. But I thought that the weight that they used on this was amazing.
Perfect.
Amazing. Like, you couldn't have planned it better. Mm-hmm. Because doing those heavy front squats and then going into that bike, which, I mean, again, not everyone is a cyclist or does a lot of cycling, or like that wasn't the thing. I mean, maybe people had the old Schwinn Airdyne back in the days, but other than that, like, no one else was putting like bikes like that really into their repertoire. That just wasn't a thing. And then the monkey bars.
Oh gosh, it was so cool.
So cool.
It was such a good test. Again, I love the balance. This is a personal bias of mine, is I love seeing some of my favorite events and tests have kind of a little bit of everything in it, right? So you got this, you have strength, you have front squats at 225 and 155. You got that monostructural bike that no one has seen. And what sucked is that you went from blowing your legs up on the front squats to blowing your legs up more with the monostructural on the bike. There was no hand crank. It was legs only.
Legs only.
And then you go to this Killer Kage monkey bars, and then like the inner 8-year-old of me on the playground
totally
fighting back in the day. Now I just turned into a little kid as eating on the floor. So you had this amazing test and the spectacle of the tennis stadium, and it was packed. That tennis stadium was packed to the brim. There were TV screens everywhere and the lights, and oh man.
It was
on the men's side, especially. Yeah. With Matt Chan, Rich Froning, Kalipa, and then out of nowhere, you see Josh Bridges come. Yeah. And here's the cool thing about Josh was that we didn't really know who he was, but all of a sudden he's won 2 events at the CrossFit Games. And like, who's this guy giving it to Rich?
Oh, I knew who he was. That guy beat me at the regionals. I remember exactly who that dude is.
But like, Josh is a tiny guy, a lot like Taylor. But what Josh had was strength.
Oh man, he was so strong. And what I liked, looking at the programming of the event, 7 front squats. The thing is that you don't want to have to break that up and pick up the bar again. Like nobody wants to have to. Whenever we talk, as far as a coach goes, anyway, when I talk to athletes, I talk about disengaging from the event. And if you have to put that bar down, like you save so much more time if you could just stop at the top and keep that bar on you and get that next rep rather than dropping it. Mentally, you kind of, separate. So like 7, you're forced to hold on to that bar.
Yeah.
And that's heavy. So you're right. Like there is a heavy duty strength component in this event. And I mean, looking at the monkey bar part, what it looked like, what it looked like was insane because it filled the base of that stadium. And what I thought was interesting was that, again, nobody had done that. Nobody had bars in their gym where you could do stuff like that. No one would think, what, maybe I need to go to the local park and test the monkey bars and say, scoot over, 4-year-old. I'm gonna get on these monkey bars. No one did that, and it shredded people's hands. Shredded their hands.
It was already super grippy going into that.
Yeah.
That did to people's grip. So go back and watch this 2011 CrossFit Games Killer Kage. Watch the vault version so you can just listen to the crowd at the end of that event on the men's side. Josh Bridges takes that event. And you see that Josh Bridges celebration because he came from behind. I'm not going to ruin it if you haven't seen it. Go see it. Vault version only.
Hey, I take that back. You know what? Spencer won that one.
Oh, sorry. He did. Sorry.
Spencer Hendel won that. Yep.
You're right.
Josh was close. I mean, it was like 10 seconds.
Josh won the final heat.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I even have it written down. Darn it, Chase. The Spencer Hendel whole overall event at 624. The final men's heat had that amazing.
Yeah.
With Josh. On the women's side, Elizabeth Akinwale, her first event win, and she came out of nowhere, but what she was doing that nobody else could do, you remember this?
Skipping.
She would monkey bar.
Oh, no, she stayed on it.
She would turn, so what they did was you would monkey bar. If you fell, you just went back up on the bar that you dropped.
Yeah.
And what most athletes or all athletes were doing is they would get across, drop, turn around, and jump back up. Akinwale would just turn at the end and come right back. And she did that every single round.
Yeah.
It was cool. I'm getting goosebumps again. Here we go.
Dan, you know what? Dan Bailey did the same thing.
Do it for all of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Except, he was flying. At least I know he did it on the first round, flying
I would say
down and back.
Really thing is he did it on the first round, but I doubt he did it on the last round.
I don't know.
Fly and dive.
I'll go back and check it out.
Go back and check. So if you did, Dan, good job. to see on the women's side of Akinwale is that everyone in the crowd was watching that first turn. And then when she did it again, when she made the turn, everyone stood up a little bit and cheered a little louder.
Yeah.
And then on the third one, because she crushed everybody.
Yeah, smashed the field.
Big, she was strong, but she had the gymnastics as well. It was incredible to see on that side. But when she made that turn on the third and final one, I mean, you would have thought she won the CrossFit Games because everyone just jumped out of their seat because it was like a wave of volume as she got to the end. And then when she turned, oh man, there we go again.
Well, I mean, like she had a 40-second lead on the rest of the field. But just by doing that. And what was crazy was the fact that she had the confidence to do that. Like, no one had done this before. And that was her plan. I'm just going to go out. I'm going to turn right around and go. And nobody else decided to do that. Mm-hmm. And then once she did do it, if you watch the other athletes, they're kind of looking over like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going for second. I'm going to go for second.
Oh man. Oh yeah. That was awesome. Killer Kage. Yeah. I'm probably going to put that in my top 20 favorite games events when we bring it back to our bonus episode of our bracket style elimination of our favorite games events. So that closed out day 2. We made another cut. Okay. Based off what we've done personally, I'm not a huge fan of cutting, but if you're going to cut from event 5 to event 6 to event 7, right? They cut down to, I have it written down here. Let's see. They went from 35 to 24 after that event. I think it's a perfectly good test to cut after something like that. If you're going to cut, I think that was an appropriate cutting event, just because it kind of had a little bit of everything in there.
You mean after the Killer Kage? Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's a good event to cut with. My personal, I wouldn't have had the second skills at that one cut. I would have bumped the skills 2 forward a little bit so you can really test them that way instead of having to cut right after that. But I agree. I'm good with the cut right after the Killer Kage.
Like with a one event cut.
No, I agree. I think that's a good one for sure.
All right, so we move into the final day. It's now Sunday, and the first event is called the dog sled event.
Yeah,
I'm putting this in there again because when you look at this event, so 3 rounds for time, 30 double unders, 10 overhead squats at 135 and 95, into 3 rounds for time, 10 strict handstand push-ups, into a 40-foot sled push, 385 for the women or men, 275 for the women. And what this event did is that this is that classic, I'll say one of those top 5 Spieler moments.
Okay.
Right? So you look at, Chris's challenge always was his size, right?
Right.
Underdog, always kind of at a hindrance to his size, right? He's like 145, 150.
Giant killer, man. He's the giant killer.
Exactly. David and Goliath. In fact, I think his rogue shirt is David and Goliath. But
right.
What we saw there for him is that was there. He had to put everything he had into his body, pushing his head against the sled just to try to make it move. I think that was a classic one. But we'll move on from there. So to start the day off, this is when they're going to make their last cut before they go into the finals, which is another 3-part one. Double unders, right? Great mix of monostructural this year.
Yeah.
Running, swimming, biking, double unders.
Yeah.
Love it. 10 overhead squats, not hard. It's a forced, fast-paced event.
Totally.
Unbroken or bust. Then you go into the handstand push-ups. 10 strict. Again, at the time, no problem. For games athletes, no problem. And then that sled push was it was that one thing that just jacked them up just a little bit because you got that lower body strength and stamina, but still like it blows the arms up. And what the double unders, overhead squats, and handstand push-ups all kind of had in common, even the sled push, was that upper body pushing, pressing strength and stability.
Well, and that was something that was unique. I mean, up to the point we talked about earlier, how much pulling there's been. So here we have all pushing. Everything is a push. It's all pushing. It's all shoulders. It's all, midline stabilizing as you're driving forward, driving up, supporting up. And you're right. It forced the pace. Because none of these, and what's funny is, we talked about the chipper event at Aromas with 30 double unders, and it was kind of like, really, 30 double unders. Now here we are doing 3 rounds of 30 double unders, so now you know how fast that element is, and I think that the way that it was put in with the 30 double unders, I think that was way more appropriate because you're right. I mean, like you could fly through that. That's fast. That's super, and it's meant to be fast.
Oh yeah. And I like, as a cutting event, right? You have the skill monostructural with the double unders. You have the higher skill barbell movement with an overhead squat.
Yeah.
Moderate weight at the time for 10 reps. I mean, 135 and 95 was nothing to sneeze at.
Totally.
And then you go into the strict handstand push-ups, which is another high skill gymnastics movement. And then that sled was another unique and fun test of strength and stamina. But Josh Bridges did this. He wins again in under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All of this.
Yeah.
458. God.
Well, so he crushed it. This isn't taking anything away from what he did, but what's interesting is if you look, so Josh wins and Annie wins. They both are a minute plus over the third place finisher. They absolutely smashed. And that was one of the issues when this event came out. You saw some of the athletes really struggling on the floor with the sled push. It wasn't the handstand push-ups. It was not the overhead squats. It was not the double unders, but it was where they were on the floor, how much paint was on the floor, how much paint was not on the floor. And this was the first time, like, everyone's talked about, the sled push in the field, and this was bad. And the sled push now on the, like in the 2019 games, the sled push on the turf, and it's going to be, faster lanes and faster this. This was the first time that they did that. And you saw that there was a definite difference between the two. So as much as I like the program setup, this is one of the logistical things about programming, is making sure that it's going to be the same event for every single athlete. And then this was one of those learning years where it was like, oh, okay, cement versus paint versus if you have some rubber over here or whatever the situation is, the friction's going to be different. It's going to change the event. Yeah. Again, not taking anything away from Josh and Annie. Those guys, they killed it. But you can tell that there were some athletes that definitely were in a quote unquote slower lane than others.
Yeah. And, that's no discredit to the.
Not at all.
Because it's not their fault. And that's
no. It's not their fault. It's not, I wouldn't even say that it's the program's fault. It's a logistic issue rather than a program issue. Huh?
It's one of those things that you can't really plan for.
No. After you see it happen, you're like, oh, shit.
Whoops. Okay, so this is event 7. This is before they make their final cut down to 12.
Yep.
Got a lot of stuff in here. We got monostructural with the double unders, 2 weightlifting movements, the overhead squats, as we said, at a moderate weight, heavy on the sled push, and then those handstand push-ups. And we start to balance out kind of all that pulling with a lot of pushing. So as we go from, as you said, Josh Bridges and Annie Thorisdottir win that event, and we'll cut down to 12. So we were at 24. The field was cut in half. For a 1 event cutting test after 2 cuts so far, I'm okay with that. I don't see a bias in there. It's like, well, the strong people were the ones that did it. He's like, or the gymnastic only. So for what the cut was, when it was in the event, I'm okay with it. And then we move into the final event. Now, the final event is the same list of movements with 3 different time domains as the tests. So we'll go through the movements first. 20 cal row, 30 wall ball shots at 20 and 14. Now, I believe it's to an 11-foot target after watching the video, because the rigs were 12 feet.
Yeah.
The strip was only a foot lower. I think that was one of the different challenges that year, is that it was.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right about that.
So I think that was one of the unique wrinkles, and we saw that hurt some shorter athletes, especially on the women's side. Okay, so 20 cal row, 30 wall ball shots, 20 toes to bar, 30 box jumps, 24 and 20, 20 sumo deadlift high pulls with 108 and a 72-pound kettlebell, 30 burpees. So we have that 20-30, 20-30 pattern, 20 shoulder overhead at 135 and 95. And then distance-wise, I say it's about 100 to 120 foot sled pull. Right?
Hand over hand rope pull.
Sleds and a hand over hand rope pull. Was it 100 feet?
Yeah, because it was just across the floor. Yeah.
Okay, so how the events stacked up is that event 1 is that you had 3 minutes, basically an AMRAP, to get as far down the list as you could. 1 minute break. Event 2, 6 minutes to get as far as you can with a 2 minute break. And then event 3 was the whole event for time.
Yep.
In terms of who won on the first one, Graham Holmberg gets first on the men's side of the 104 reps. Becca Voigt, hello, Becca Voigt, gets, I believe, we call this her first CrossFit Games event win.
Yeah.
At 67. Event 2, Rich Froning gets first in event 2. Sam Briggs gets first on the second portion. And at the end, this is where we'll spend most of our, not too much time talking about it, but Pat Barber wins the end final at 11:12. And then Sam Briggs wins again at the end at 13:06. In terms of what's in here, we got everything in the kitchen sink in this event. So in terms of the finals, like they got it all in there.
Right.
After all these tests, you got 3 gymnastics, 3 weightlifting, 1 monostructural there at the end. Actually 4 weightlifting. So they got it all in there. And in terms of the tests within the test, a unique addition to the movement, I would say, was the height of that wall ball shot. And then the sumo deadlift high pull with the kettlebell.
Yeah, that was a unique one. Just because we've done, especially back then, there were more, I would say there were more sumo deadlift high pull. You would see that more in workouts. You'd see that more in training than you do now. But the oddity with that is that 108 pound for the guys and the 72 for the ladies, it's big. And so it's awkward to get your hands up to the collarbone. And that's what the standard was. You had to get your hands up to your collarbone, and that ball was just in the way. So it was really interesting seeing the athletes trying to maneuver themselves around that object as they're trying to get that up. I mean, they could do the weight. It wasn't that the weight is overly heavy. It was just awkward. And again, I don't think that there would have been many athletes that have done sumo deadlifts with a kettlebell or have that heavy of a kettlebell to even do it.
I didn't know they made kettlebells that heavy.
I know, man.
I was like, how much is that?
Wait, what is a pood exactly?
People can do this?
What is that weight?
All right, so let's go through how this event kind of unfolded in terms of the end. And we kind of wanted to talk about this. Now, we've had 3 cuts so far.
Yep.
We already talked to the scoring system, was that 5-point tier system down to 6th, and then 2 points after that. The problem then, and we learned from this a little bit, is that they never changed the scoring system when you went from 35 to 24 to 12.
Right.
You're moving into the final event, and the worst you can get in terms of finishing place is 12th.
Yep.
And what was the points on that? 40?
That is 63 points.
3 points. Think about that. You can get dead last and still get 63 points.
Yeah.
So what we saw, I'll be honest, at the time, I thought this was total bullshit. Barber totally gamed the crap out of this. And he basically takes off the first two events. I think he got 10th and 12th.
Yeah.
And so for 3 minutes, he did some work, gets 10th, rests a minute. For the second round, does very little work at all for 6 minutes.
Well, yeah, because, okay, so he was last in that one, and the athletes, and there was a tie for 10th, they did twice as many reps as he did. So he literally took that entire event off.
The 6 minutes of rest plus 2 minutes of rest. So basically, they start to finish. The last final. 3, 4, 12 minutes.
Yep.
Pat Barber has been actively recovering for 12 minutes.
Yep.
And then dude comes out and sends it. Right? He's been saving it up for 12 minutes, sends it, wins the final. I love Pat. We're good friends. But man, when I saw that, I didn't really know him at the time. I was like, that's a total chump move. Like, you put your hands up like you win the CrossFit Games. Like, you've been gaming this for 12. Now, when you look at it now, like, genius.
Yeah.
Genius.
Yeah.
He wasn't in contention to podium. He was sitting outside the top 10. But dude racks up 100 points that he legit did at the end. But then gets 126 points or something like that. But his ass for 12 minutes. So
if you look at the amount of points he got for doing that, so he totaled out 230 points for doing that. If you look at where Ben Smith, he beats Ben Smith, who got 11th, 9th, and 2nd. Mm-hmm. Beats him by a point. Rich got third, first, and 8th, 261 points. So he's only 30 points behind Rich. And Graham, who won that, he got 1st, 2nd, and 4th. That's 280. So out of 3 events, doing what Pat did, he was only down 50 points. Now, that's the problem with the Cup, because even if you look on the women's side, like, we talk about what Pat did because it was so dramatic. Mm-hmm. But on the women's side, it was the same thing. Samantha Briggs was 7th, first. So 7th, not really having to try all that. Not saying she didn't try, but if she was able to kind of coast a little bit, knowing that she has she's known as the engine. So if she's in she can get into that pain cave and go, and then smashes the next two with a first and a first. Mm-hmm. On the N2 and the event and the N3. So, she slammed that as well. Same deal.
To your point, who actually did it better than Sam was Becca Boyd.
Well, she just crushed the entire thing. Becca did not send it. She was first, second. She just smashed everybody.
Smashed everyone, and that's what got her up onto the podium because, you get first, second, and second. 100 points, 95 points, 95 points.
Yeah.
That's what you wanted to see.
Well, exactly, and that's what I think. My personal opinion about the final, I like the events, but what I think messed the final up was the fact that the recovery part became part of the event, and now you strategize between all 300 points. I would have rather it have been a 10-minute break between each of them, so that they're each individually tested events rather than all of them put together, unless it's set up like the score, like the skills, where it was, where you have it as its own little mini event, and then that's how you do it. That would have been another way to do it, or I think a better way to do it.
And again, this is hindsight's 2020 as we look back.
Totally.
We're just kind of giving our opinions of what we have liked to see. What about maybe a minimum work requirement, and then you just get cut?
That's possible, but I don't think anyone would have planned. You're at the CrossFit Games. Who's going to toss out an event at the CrossFit Games? I don't think that was on anybody's radar. And and honestly, if Pat, and I'll throw Sam in there too, if that was the idea, which was, so the worst I can do is 12th. I'll just sit this one out then. Mm-hmm. That's some pretty ingenious on the spot thinking, that goes into it. If that was a mental game, honestly, a competitor is a competitor, and you're going to play within the rules and do what you can to get your best score, and that's a genius way to do it. Although I would have thought that if that would have been the case, Pat should have gone a little harder on the first one.
Right.
And then whatever, get 30 reps on the next one. You know what I mean? Like, go all out, take a break, then go all out again, so he can get a little. I mean, again, he was third, or he was 12th in that second event. Just do one event. Just do one rep.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I'm totally with you, because I mean, good on Pat Barber. I can say that now. At the time, I was like, I didn't really like that strategy. But now that I look at it, I'd do that too.
Hell yeah.
Now, to what you said is like, I would have fully gone on the first one.
Yep.
Go hard for 3 minutes. I mean, you barely got into the toes of the bar, maybe into the box jumps.
Yeah.
You're talking about 20 cal row, 30 wall balls, 20 toes of the bar, and some box jumps. I'm going to be fine after that. So I'm going to send that as fast as I can. Take 8 minutes
of rest,
and then go into the next event.
Yeah.
The final. Absolutely. And I think that was one of those things that good on the athlete to strategize to do that, because I'm a big fan of strategizing.
Totally.
A lot of my limitations were physical, but I excelled at event strategy. That's kind of where I was successful in CrossFit. So I was all about it and the way they did it. And again, I'm not faulting the athletes for doing what they did with the rules that they were given.
Totally. I think that it's unfortunate that it was programmed that became an element. I have a hard time. I mean, I think in every event, you can strategize in every single event, like what's going to play best for you. But I don't like it when this piece right here completely changed what the event was supposed to be. The event should have been like what Becca Voigt did. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to attack and I'm going to race and I'm going to race and I'm going to race. That's the purest setup of it. So that's why I was saying, like, either set it up the exact same way where you make it the skills version, where it's a mini competition within a competition, or you take
one final score.
And I don't say you don't make it 300 points. I mean, you still make it the 100 points. Or if you want 300 points, then you have enough rest in between where it's now the races aren't dependent on each other.
Like, every event is now a full on.
Yeah.
Because you do get to recover. There's no game.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that idea. Yeah. I mean, for what it is on paper, great final. Great idea, great concept. Get as far as you can, If everybody took the Becca Voigt route, I think that's what the scope was, and what Dave thought they were going to do when he programmed it.
Oh, 100%. Well, and if you look at on the women's side, it was basically like that. I mean, Becca, Sam, and Annie, I mean, those guys all went for it. On the men's side, like, there was a lot of bouncing around on the men's side. I mean, the one who really didn't have that was Graham.
Yeah.
With a 1, 2, and a 4. But everyone else was kind of bouncing all over the place.
And I think you saw a lot of guys that were in striking distance of the podium take that approach.
Yeah.
Of trying to get through it. So that is it in terms of 2011. Now, we had 10 scored events. Now, skills within the skills overall, there was so much more tested this year than we have ever had at the CrossFit Games. And when you infuse those skills as kind of their own mini tests, it really did cast a very broad, wide net in terms of everything that they tested these athletes with. I think when you look at maybe an individual skill, some people had some issues with that. Personally, for me, when I see the breadth of everything that was tested, I think this is one of the most, up to this point, all-encompassing tests of fitness to truly, really start to see that these were the fittest men and women on earth at the time.
I liked what the tests were. I'm not, and even when I said my little preview thing, I'm not against the skill pieces. I'm against the skill pieces when it becomes its own deal, because then I think that I think what ends up happening is you start testing athleticism rather than fitness. Fitness is if we look at what fitness is, it's increase work capacity across broad time and modal domain, not are you really good at this one thing. And it's hard because then it's like you could say a 1 rep max lift, which is a very classic thing that you see in every single competition. You can say that a 1 rep max lift is a skill, and it could be just as valid as can you throw the softball a certain distance. So it gets really blurry. I just think that I think that if you put those individuals, if you use those individual skills and put them into an event, I would rather see it done that way. I like the farmer carry that they did. I think the way they did it was cool. I'll say this. Whether you like the softball throw or not, or the L sits or whatever, the way that they made it with a competition within the competition, to me, makes it okay. So no, I don't think that throwing a softball is
okay.
A test for the fittest on earth or anything like that. But the way that it was put together, it's now an event where it's a piece of something, not you were going to win or lose because you can't throw a softball.
Yeah.
So I think that was honestly pretty ingenious.
I think that's a good way to minimize the outliers having a greater effect on the overall leaderboard.
Totally.
I will say, in terms of your athleticism take, is as the fitness program, the way it's defined as you said, I could see athleticism not really being a necessary part of the training. But as the sport of CrossFit, I do want to see some athletic tests in there, because when you kind of look at that overall pyramid that they have in the level 1, sport is the top, right?
Yeah.
The tip top part of that. So it is included in our whole concept of what is fitness, what is CrossFit. So I do want to see some athletic tests in there. I don't want the overall test to be an athletic test, because there is a stark difference between fittest on earth and most athletic on earth. And at the time, I think that's where a lot of people were coming from, is they were viewing the sport of CrossFit as a traditional sport.
Right.
He used to say, I think he was even during this time, was like Adrian Peterson, because he was, the greatest NFL running back at the time, could walk into the games and win. You're like,
right.
No. Like nobody can hang with him. I was like, yes, because he's an athlete in his own sport, in his own world. It's like, yes, he's going to have some of his things better than all of us. However, that's not what we're saying. When we say the fittest on earth, we are not saying the most athletic on earth. However, when you test the fittest, personally for me, is I do want to see some athletic tests in there in terms of sport, because it is included in that pyramid that we have for the what is CrossFit. Well,
and that's where it gets very jumbled up. I mean, what allowed CrossFit to do what CrossFit has done is we have a definition of what we're testing. What's the definition of athletic? Like all of a sudden it gets very vague. But you can tell this is what was so great about Rich. Rich was so naturally athletic that when all of a sudden they said, all right, everyone, we're going to do a max handstand walk.
Right.
It's like, okay. And just hops up and does it because he is an athletic person. He has athletic skills. He can do a lot of these individual things really, really well. But I think it's being able to take those pieces and put them together. So that's I mean, it's weird because you take the idea of the throw in the softball and that becomes the definition of the skills 1 and 2. Like that's what everyone talks about.
Yeah.
All the other pieces that are in there are great. Exactly. But again, it's the way that they were put together where you didn't win or lose based on this. Now, this is one of the things that even if you look at the last games, why are people getting cut on a run? Like I don't get to show my CrossFitness because I lose this run.
Right.
And now all of a sudden that's not showing that you're a good CrossFit, you're not the fittest or not. And it's like, well, no, it's, you have to look at the whole picture, and what cuts or not, I think that the way that it's been packaged and the way that it was put together, it was really interesting. There are videos out there from that year where Seval Matosian's running around talking to all the athletes, and is it appropriate? Is a softball throw appropriate? And it's funny watching all the athletes try to maneuver their head around that, because you could tell all of them were going, no, it's not appropriate, but I don't have a choice because this is a competition. They're all saying like, oh yeah, totally. Oh, I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's great. They're all convincing themselves that it's appropriate, and it is appropriate because if this is the competition, then that's a competition. You don't get to go, well, I don't think it's appropriate, so I need to vote to change it. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But if you look at all the pieces and how that was put together, now it's not the end all be all. The only other way that I think you could have done it is something like the Killer Kage, where you take a funky skill, which is that swinging on the monkey bars. Like, where is that written anywhere in a fitness program? It's not. But if you look at an athletic kid at recess, they're going to be able to do that. So again, the vague definition of athleticism is in there because the fittest athletes are gonna the most athletic athletes are going to also be fit. But then you saw some very fit athletes that had holes in their athleticism, whether it was throwing the ball or snatching or whatever the case may be. So I think overall it was fun. I think that people need to be very careful when they're programming pieces like that. They need to know how that's supposed to sit in the overall plan. And I got to hand it to Dave on that one, because it walks the line. It walks the line, and especially at the time, it was interesting.
You want to force athletes to walk that line in an uncomfortable position and raise a bar that may be slightly out of reach that year, but to also bring up the competition in the years to come. So even technically, even the swimming was a skill. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, the swimming that was added, everyone's so used to it now, but swimming then, what's the difference between, not everybody, the big argument there was you had athletes that are like, I've never been in the ocean. I don't have an ocean by me. How is that fair to test my fitness because I haven't been in the ocean? Or I'm from Iceland, or I'm from, I don't even have a pool near me. Mm-hmm. And the distance that they had was not a lot, but it knocked athletes out just based on that quote unquote skill. So, I mean, you could technically say that was a skill as well. It's the same thing as throwing a softball.
Well, that's where I feel like you need to be athletic to be called the fittest on earth in some capacity, because I don't care if you've never done it before. An athlete will figure it out on the fly. And that's what Rich Froning was. And that's what he was
exactly.
able to do. So, I'm with you there. So closing out 2011, Rich Froning gets his very first win at the CrossFit Games. He wins 3 events with an average finish place of 5.2. Josh Bridges gets second. He also gets 3 event wins, but his average finish place was 8.8. And this is where kind of the numbers and scoring system gets a little tricky. Ben Smith gets 3rd overall. Yeah. In terms of total points, Rich was 856, Josh was 763, and then Ben was 738. However, Ben's average finish place was 0.1 better than Josh Bridges. And I think that that scoring system had a little bit to do with it. However, Ben Smith didn't win a single event, which is kind of a testament of being a true balanced CrossFitter. It's like, you don't have to win any event to be the best. And Ben certainly shows that later. On the women's side, it was Annie Thorisdottir. She gets her first win or overall at the CrossFit Games. 3 event wins with an average place finishing of 5.6. Kristen Clever, didn't say her name one time, didn't win a single event, still takes 2nd. And then Becca Voigt, which a lot of that had to do with that final 3-part event, vaults herself into 3rd overall. Their average finishing places all balance out: 5.6 for Annie, 6.1 for Kristen, and 7.6 for Becca. So that is your 2011 CrossFit Games podium.
Yeah. You know, and I liked how that was set up. The downside, I think, again, is that the scoring system, as the cuts are made, the events get less and less important. Your finishing becomes less and less important because you're not going to lose as many points. And we don't really see that adjustment until 2019.
Now, even with that being said, I'm going to say the fittest one, Rich Roman.
Oh, still one. Yeah.
Best there was that year in 2011. But when we look at the overall pro ring, which is what we're here to do, I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed the 2011 CrossFit Games.
Yeah. If I had to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I'd give a thumbs up for sure. I mean, there were a lot of tests, and there really wasn't anything. There really wasn't a whole lot that was untouched on this, and I thought it was good. Yep. I thought it was good.
So that'll do it for 2011. Looking forward to 2012. Before we take off, thank you. 5,000 downloads.
Yeah.
Guys, we will see you for 2012.